Hey folks, good day to you all. This is a huge departure from what I normally post on here. As you can see, I usually put my weird music or audiobook stuff or things like that. So in lieu of typing a long drawn out comment for a video I was watching, I decided to just make a video comment. The video in question is on the channel of Object of Art, run by Miss M. She's a great film analyst, especially in regards to Stanley Kubrick movies. And this video that I'm commenting on is one, Eyes Wide Shut. She just recently posted a great video discussion about what it's all about, trying to figure it all out. Of course, they're all untestable hypotheses since the writer is deceased. And anyone in the know has been contradicted by other people in the know, and everyone's going to keep up the act forever. It's like a pro wrestling gig or something. So we'll never be able to test our hypotheses. And so here's mine. Okay, Miss M's great video. Here she starts discussing the topic with the shot of Nicole Kidman, bare-backed in her temple, Aphrodite, Venus de Milo with arms and a head. She is lofty. She is in her pantheon. She's a goddess, or at least some kind of higher spirit like that. Miss M also relates the story of the Garden of Eden to this whole thing, especially towards the end, I think it is. I haven't seen this movie in a long time. I saw it probably 12, 13 years ago. So I'm just going off of that. And I'm going off of other film analysts' analyses. But of course, towards the end, Nicole Kidman's character, Alice in Wonderland? That's maybe a stretch. Anyway, she relates the dream she has where they're in New York City, blah, etc., etc. Central Park, screwing lots of guys. And of course, she refers to that act as fucking because that's all it can be that's all it can be with mortals. She's immortal, right? She's a goddess. So all it can be with humans is fucking, even with her husband. Her husband, Bill, is just a puny mortal. Now Miss M brings up the point that the only time she calls it making love is with this naval officer that she fantasizes about. Now, who would she make love with as opposed to fucking? Someone on her level, another of the pantheon, a naval officer, Poseidon. That's who she would make love with, only another god. I did a little bit of research. Now here's where the ancients missed a great opportunity. There's really no stories that anyone's found of Aphrodite and Poseidon having a tryst, or at least having any children, like any offspring. But it's pretty common in mythology that gods will get with humans for a little bit and then just split. They'll just leave that family. Alice even mentions that she would leave Bill and their child for this officer. That is totally something that the gods would do. It's petty fucks. Anyway. So there is that connection to the Garden of Eden. What's that about? So is she Eve? No, I don't think so. She is the goddess. She's Aphrodite. She is Venus, Ishtar, Inanna, Hecate. Oh, say the names. All that. Also, Lilith, Adam's first wife, the shape-shifting sorceress, who was rejected for Eve. And in the story that I like, the apocryphal story that's left out of the Bible, it is not that old devil called Satan, that is the serpent. It is Lilith. She takes the form of a serpent to out of revenge to screw up the whole deal. I like that story better, and it fits. Also, let's keep in mind, in a Stanley Kubrick movie, characters can represent multiple characters of other stories at the same time. And this whole movie could be a dream. It could be a delusion. It isn't necessarily a representation of anything in this material world. It could be anything. Now, let's digress a little bit to another movie. It's all going to come full circle in a dramatic way that I'm setting up. So anyway, let's go to another great movie, Kwai-Dan. 1964. Directed by Masaki Kobayashi. And now, I'm going to make a strong statement here. I set this statement in stone and reject all others. Kwai-Dan is the most beautiful horror film ever made. I haven't seen all the other horror films in the world, but I will put this one right up there, number one. Most beautiful. Now you might think, oh, well, Shining's better. Yeah, Shining is drab compared to Kwai-Dan. Both excellent movies, but visually, Kwai-Dan's got them all beat. So it's an anthology, right? There's separate stories in this movie, all horror stories taken from Japanese folklore or based in Japanese folklore. One of them is The Woman in the Snow. This story is common throughout all human cultures, I think. You can find any culture in any time and find some version of this story. It's like hardwired into the human condition or something. So anyway, I'll summarize and I'll kind of mishmash all the stories into one summary. So it's about a young apprentice who's with an older mentor. So he's learning a trade from this person. They get caught in a situation, a storm. In this case, it's a snowstorm. They find some shelter. The old man is dying. He's freezing to death. And in the Japanese version, like the spirit of freezing to death shows up, and it's this woman. And she takes the man's life. She breathes, she sucks it out of him. And of course, the young apprentice is seeing all this, and he's completely dumbstruck with fear. He can't move. The spirit comes over to him and says, you know, you're still strong, you're young, you're stupid, you're naive. I'll give you a pass, but you can never tell anyone what you've seen, or I will kill you. She's a force of nature. You can't bargain with a force of nature. So the youth grows throughout time, becomes a young man, falls in love, gets married, starts a family. And one night they're just lying there in bed, shutting down the house for the night. And finally, the young man says, I have to tell you something about something that I saw years ago that you just reminded me of. He tells the story, and of course, the woman shoots up and says, you broke your promise. You promised you would never tell anyone you saw me. And it's like, oh, it's her. So, but then again, she's like, well, you are the father of our children, and for that reason alone, I'll let you live, but you can never see me again. And she's gone. In some versions, she takes the demon children with her, and they're gone, and he never sees them again. Okay, back to Eyes Wide. How does this all fit together? If you haven't started putting it together from what I've said yet, listen on. So what happens in the scene in that little Hellfire Club where Bill gets called out dumbass showed up in a taxi because he's really just a hick. He's a rube. And that's also, I think, where the Napoleon connection comes in, because that's what Napoleon was. He was trying to be elite, but he couldn't make it in. He couldn't make it into the aristocracy because he couldn't pass all the little faux pas tests that still exist today. That's what etiquette is. It's a test to see what level you're at. And that's how people in charge or higher ups will deal with you at whatever level that you're at, or whatever level you fail at. That's where you will stay forever. Even if you become the emperor, you'll still never be in the club. So anyway, what occurs? Okay, he fails it. He shows up in a taxi like a ding-a-ling. Then, he fails there. He fails with the password thing, I think. There wasn't 2 passwords, and he's like, oh, I don't know. Take off your mask. Oops, you don't ever do that in one of those parties. So what does Red Cape do? Points at him sternly, saying, never, you must promise never to tell what you've seen to anyone, ever, or there will be dire consequences, blah, blah, blah. So what does Ding-a-ling do when he gets back? Is it starting to, can you see the parallel forming yet? He tells her, and of course, what does she do? You promise never to tell. It's him. Alice is Red Cape. No, that didn't happen in the movie, but you can extrapolate from known quantities, right? And that might be a stretch, but I don't think so. Remember, she's a shape-shifting sorceress, and this could all be a dream anyway, and dreams are prominent in this movie. The dream that Alice has and talks about is very important. This could be the dream world. So it's not impossible that Alice is Red Cape. And then, as I was doing research on the cast, just to see who was in it, this shows up. Yes, Red Cape was played by a woman. Sorry, Rob Ager, you dropped the ball on that one. I about dropped a poopy brick when I saw that. I was like, wow, one of my hypotheses could actually be true. Wow. So she was in on it the whole time. And look here, see, she has the mask. She's sleeping with his mask because I think that's the version of him she wants. She wants to elevate him up. She was disappointed that he showed up to the gig in a taxi. And she knew about all the other women. She knew the whole time. It was her racket. It's her gig. This is her shtick. She is the goddess. She is Inanna, Lilith, Hecate, all that. You don't get nothing over her. She is a force of nature that you cannot reason with. She has very high standards, impossible standards. You will never make love with her. You can only fuck her. Or she's fucking you. Again, the unattainable aristocracy. Hierarchy, pantheon, whatever you want to call it. It's something that mere mortals can never achieve. Like Napoleon could never achieve. Like Bill here can never achieve. And to the point of all the nudity, sex, and specifically prostitution. In Miss M's videos, she states, or she brings up the point of Kubrick kind of resenting that he's under the thumb of all these studio executives. He can't do what he wants to do. He has to make what they want him to make. And that's why his screenplay for Napoleon was never made. So he probably feels like a prostitute. So when he's depicting prostitutes, it's not in a bad light. He empathizes with them. because he feels that way. Look at a lot of his movies. There's prostitutes all throughout his movies, and they are not bad guys. They're heroes, or they're victims, or they're people that you can empathize with. Even in that goofball movie AI, there was that gigolo robot who helped in the quest. In The Shining, there's the idea also that Miss M poses that I agree with. I think it's a great hypothesis that, like, Ullman, the manager, whatever, he's a pimp, and like his girl Friday, that secretary that Miss M mentions, that's his bottom bitch. And he recognizes Wendy as emotionally, mentally unstable or vulnerable. So boom, man, that is more of what a pimp is looking for. Okay, everything else I'm talking about is just kind of spreading out now, and I didn't want to do that. So I'll post a few links to Miss M's video, a link to that article about who plays Red Cape, and whatever else seems pertinent to the discussion at hand. So thanks for putting up with this rambling. This is kind of just a side deal. I just felt like this was a better way to post a comment.